Hey, Shalom, this is Dan again, and wanted to pick up where we left off. Now, this section here, this one is Balak. Now, this section and the next one, Phineas, they happen to be two of my favorite stories in all of Deuteronomy. And I'm not just saying that because they're the ones we're working on. I'm saying that because when we go through here, you're going to see just some of the passion that it just really gets me. It's all about the being sold out for God and doing what God wants us to do. It's all the stuff we've been learning, but it's put into a different story. And I want to just jump right in. Now, we got this one here, Balak. This comes from Numbers 22:2 through 25:9. Now, I got my notes here with me, so I'm going to kind of read a little bit, talk to you a little bit, but hopefully through all this you're going to understand how awesome I think this story really is. Now, we got the direction of the fire by night, the cloud by day. The people of Israel, they're being led to the plains of Moab. And it was just beyond the Jordan River, opposite Jericho. Balak was the king of Moab. And he saw that Israel had done all the stuff to the Amorites. He became scared. So what he decides to do is he gets this guy named Balaam, who is pretty solid in whatever God tells him happens. And so he figures that if he can get Balaam to curse the Israelites, that he and his army, the Moabites, that they're going to be okay. Well, here's the story. Here's kind of how it goes. Balak says, Balaam, I need you to get rid of these guys. I need you to curse them because I know that what you say has validity. And so if you tell someone, be blessed, they're going to be blessed. And if you tell someone, be cursed, they're going to be cursed. So I need you to do this for the Israelites for me. Well, we read here in Numbers 22:6. It says, therefore, please come and curse the people for me, because they are stronger than I. This is Balak talking. They are stronger than I am. Maybe I will be able to strike them down and drive them out of the land, for I know that whomever you bless is in fact blessed, and whomever you curse is in fact cursed. Well, that night, Balaam sought God as to what he should do. And we pick it up here. Numbers 22:12 says, but God said to Balaam, do not go with them. You must not put a curse on those people because they are blessed. Now this is God talking about his people. We know that Balaam, he did work for God. Even though he was hanging out with the Moabites during this part of the story, we know that he worked for God. And so he seeks God's permission on this. And God says, don't curse them. Just don't do it. Well, he told this response to Balak, and Balak was a little distraught. And so what he did is Balak said, okay, I'll put a price on it for you. I'll make it worth your time. If you do this cursing for me, I will make sure that you get what you need as well. Well, Balaam tells him, it's not about the price. He said, I don't really care about getting paid or not getting paid. It's about doing what God says and I should do, or don't do what he says I shouldn't do. Balak didn't understand this because, remember, he wasn't following Adonai. He wasn't following God the way that Balaam was, and the way the Israelites were. So, in reading verse 20, Numbers 22:20, we see that God gives Balaam permission. Now, he's come to God a couple times asking what he should do. And so God gives him permission here in verse 20 to go along, but to act in obedience. Now, in verse 22, we read that God's anger burned against him because he went. In verse 20, we got God saying, go ahead and go. And in verse 22, we got God being angry at Balaam because he's actually going. Why? We'll get to that in just a second. So, what happens is Balaam is going, and he gets stationed. All right, it says now, the angel of God stationed himself on a path, and Balaam was unable to see this donkey. Balaam was unable to see the angel. Sorry. Now, Balaam himself couldn't see the angel, but Balaam's donkey was able to see the angel. And he began to slow his pace, and he began to veer off track, and he began to kind of go around this angel. But with every move, or with every slowness, or with every stubbornness that the donkey did, Balaam would spank his donkey, try and get him to get back in line, and whip him back into shape, so to say. And eventually, the donkey talks to him. Now, I make a little joke here because there have been times when I have acted like a donkey, but I have yet to have a donkey actually talk to me. You can take that personally, I'm sure, because we've all been there. There are times when we act like this donkey, but in this case, the donkey was actually doing the right thing. He was being stubborn on purpose, and the donkey speaks to him and says, "Don't you see that angel standing right there in front of us?" Now, I think this is kind of cool too, because the angel actually appears once this happens. He makes himself visible and says, it's because of this donkey that you're being saved. But I want to go back and challenge you, because here's the point that I found interesting when I was doing some research on this. Again, we got in verse 20 where God says, "Balaam, go ahead and go, but say what I want you to say." And then we got in verse 22, God's anger burning against him. Well, because the angel told Balaam, Adonai's anger rose up, and here's what the angel told him. It is because he was so quick to do this task. Again, now, Balaam said he didn't want the money. It wasn't about that. It was about obeying God, and God now gives him permission, and so Balaam goes, and then you got God being angry at him. But the angel is telling him that you were so quick to go, that's why God is angry with you. In Numbers 22:32, we see in the Hebrew we see the word yarat, and it is the meaning to be reckless or push headlong. See, what happened was that God was mad because not that Balaam was doing what God said, but that he was so quick this time to do what was opposing to God. Yes, God gave him permission to go, but he was so quick to do it. He didn't maybe see all the circumstances, the pros and cons of this situation. He was just so quick to jump out and do it. That's good at times. There are times when we need to be quick with our feet and to move out when God says to move out. But he was so quick to do this that it made God mad, because in the end, he was going to, he might have put a curse on these people. I think it's really cool that God actually put the subtitle, or the parentheses there, where it says, "Say what I tell you to say." Because that might have been the last little nugget that kept him from doing something wrong and cursing God's people. Now, I want to say this though. There are times when I need to be yarat, and there are times when I need to be the donkey and be stubborn and not move so quickly and not let those who I'm leading or who are riding on me as a parent, as a leader, as a whatever, not to be so quick to bring them into a position that's going to injure them as well. We talked about this before, one or two times back, when we talked about, I don't want to be so quick to make a mistake that my mistake it brings the suffering of so many people. We saw this with Korach. His decision cost not only him and his family, but other people their blessing, and they died there in the wilderness. I don't want the same thing here to be true of me, that I'm the beast of burden that's carrying all these people, but I'm carrying them to their death. I want to be the one who is more like this donkey and be stubborn because of what I see in front of me, because I see God saying, not really the way I wanted you to do this. Now let's go on, because there's a little bit more in this Torah portion I want to share with you. So we have Balak, who has now got Balaam to go with him, and we got God saying, say only what I tell you to say. And so he goes up to the high places. Balaam goes up to the high place, and a high place of Baal, that is, and he sees a portion of Israel, and the request is made from Balak to Balaam to curse the people from this point of view. Well, we see that they get the bowls ready, they get the sacrifice ready, and then what is it that God tells Balaam? It's not a curse, it's a blessing. In Numbers 23:3 we read, Balaam said to Balak, stand by your burnt offering while I go off. Maybe Adonai will come and meet me, and whatever he shows me, I will tell you. Now, away with Balak, Adonai spoke to Balaam, and in verse 20, chapter 23:5 says, Adonai put a word in Balaam's mouth, and that word was a blessing. Numbers 23:8 says, how am I to curse those who God has not cursed? And how am I to denounce those who Adonai has not denounced? This is what he says back to Balak when Balak says, so how did it go? And he says, well, I didn't curse them, I blessed them. And Balak says, what? And so this was his response. I'm not going to curse those who God has not told me to curse. I'm going to bless those who God tells me to bless, though. Now Balak heard this and he thought, well, that wasn't quite the answer I want, but let's try a different point of view. So they go up again to another high spot and they do the same thing and they do another offering and Balak goes away and Balaam does his thing, and again God pronounces a blessing through his mouth. And this happens 3 times. And I just want to point out to you real quick too, I read this and this I thought was interesting as well, that whenever you see a bowl or something, a bowl especially, in the context, bowls were a pretty expensive thing. And so if you had the ability to put down these bowls as they're doing in the sacrifice 3 times, then you obviously had wealth. And we know that Balak was a king, so he had the wealth. But as you're reading through the scriptures and you ever see a reference to a bowl, keep in mind that that was a costly thing. That was like diamonds to them in some aspects. So being that they're doing this 3 times, Balak is really wanting this done. He's bringing out the fatted cow and he's putting it all there on the line, hoping that this is going to be done. But every time he takes Balaam to another place, God's words through Balaam's mouth are those of blessing. I want to skip down on my notes here. Numbers 23:19 says, God is not a human who lies, or a mortal who changes his mind. When he says something, he will do it. When he makes a promise, he will fulfill it. I praise God because here's what I've found in this. God made a promise to Abraham back in Genesis 15, I think it was, about all these events that were going to happen and how one day they were going to be a free country, a free people. Israel was going to be a free mass of people, a nation, and they were going to come back to this same spot and worship God. And if it had not been for this promise that God made back then these words wouldn't have any validity. But they do, because God is a God who keeps his promise. He's not one of us who says it and then doesn't come through with it. When God says something, he means it, and he sticks with it. Having a wife now, we have this thing where we do this little pinky promise, pinky swear, and it's it could easily become tradition. Oh, I pinky swear I'm going to love you till I die. But it's one of those things where I am learning how to make that mean something. How to make that mean something serious. That it's not just words we're going to throw around, ooh, pinky swear. No, this is something that I'm learning how to make my word. And that's how God works. When he says it, he will do it. He will accomplish it. He will make it happen. Skipping down a little bit more, we see that Balak and Balaam, they're going back and forth. And so, again, on the 3rd time, God puts these words in Balaam's mouth. God, who brought them out of Egypt, gives them the strength of a wild ox. They will devour the nations opposing them, break their bones, pierce them with their arrows. This is the 3rd blessing that is spoken through Balaam's mouth over the nation of Israel. And we see as we come to a close here in this Torah portion that Balak is at a position where he realizes he's not going to win this one. He comes up with a different strategy, a different plan, and we'll get into that the next time. But what I want you to take away is this. A couple things. Let's make sure that when we need to be the donkey, we're the donkey. Let's make sure that when we hear God's voice that we understand the difference between, yes, we need to move on because the fear of God or the anger of God will come on us if we don't, as opposed to those times when the anger comes on us because we're just too quick to do it our own way. Let's make sure also that we're speaking the words of God. And lastly, I want you to take this away. When God gives you a promise, he will deliver on it. It ain't no joke. Shalom. I'm Dan.